from the monitor to avoid feedback. The first question is from Puebla, Mexico. Go ahead, please.
Buenas tardes a todos. Estamos hablando de la Escuela Normal Rural Carmen Cerdán de Teteles, Puebla.
Good afternoon from Puebla.
Es la siguiente. Uno de los puntos más importantes en la conferencia que estamos mirando.
One of the most important topics today has to do with research and development. My question is, what skills from this team from research and development will most help the organization go forward?
What kind of research and development do we need in order to move the organization forward?
Well, that's a very wide-ranging topic. I think it will be more specific to the organization and their strategy, that they will develop some specialized skills that they can use on their products and the services they're delivering.
And then they would also should evaluate their ongoing efforts, not necessarily doing research, but more evaluation than research.
Well, I think they're going to have to do both.
Okay.
You're going to research and evaluate and research and evaluate.
That's right. The
only thing I would add is that particularly in the applied sciences, they need to be tied to the mission, carefully integrated in the long-range goals of the organization, and not a spun-off organization out of touch with marketing, sales, and so on.
That's true. Let's continue along the same lines as you have been discussing in terms of a variety of technologies that we need in order to incorporate in organizations. Can you elaborate on that a little?
Well, I think what we have to do in organizations is, to some extent, specialize in those technologies. We're not going to be able to do everything. Even the very large organizations will focus on an area that they are going to be particularly good at. And then you can accept the technologies that are generally available. I mean, for word processing and PowerPoint and the internet, you don't need to specialize there. You can take products that other people have developed.
And I think we have to be careful of not falling in the trap of going with, number one, what's most popular, or number two, what's cheapest. That we have to be real careful about determining what our needs are now, what our long-term needs are, and tying the technology to the need or the demand of the organization rather than popularity or what's the least expensive.
Right.
Okay. Our next question is from Sinaloa. Go ahead, please.
Muy buenos días. Hay un dicho que dice, no es más sabio que el que sabe más, sino aquel que sabe mejor.
There's a saying that says that he who knows more because he's old, not because he studied.
Ser más efectivos, tomar mejores decisiones y generar una cultura emprendedora. Cuando el factor del calor y trato del ser humano a ser humano.
How do we move forward into developing a collaborative culture, and how do we integrate this with the human factor, the warmth necessary for all this?
Let me speak this. I like your quote, of course, but just because we've been doing something for 50 years doesn't mean we're any darn good at it. I think the key to integrating an entire staff, if you wish, with varying levels of experience into a technology or any kind of innovative project, is creating initially a sense of urgency. Everyone, and I mean everyone, must feel there's a real need. That to me is the key. If you don't have it, if people don't feel a real need for whatever your innovation, I think you're going to be kind of crippled from the beginning in terms of trying to integrate people into the project.
I think you've got a real challenge there, because you have arrogance both in the youth and the older. Some people that are older feel that they must be given respect just in whatever their way of doing it without changing, but also the youth are certainly certain that they know the right answers. In some way we need to blend both of those together.
Are those two cultures different, and do we need to blend them together somehow?
Yes, they are very different. They are very different. The youth that have grown up in the internet culture, the digital culture, certainly have experienced something that, or haven't not experienced that, have a different perspective. I think, though, that as older people get involved, I can remember some very old secretaries that refused to do word processing or computers. Once they got into it, really got into it, and I know several stories of grandmothers who this was the only way they were going to connect with their grandchildren and see the pictures, quickly learned how to use computers and the internet.
And I think, too, we can overestimate the familiarity of the younger generation with technology versus the older generation. I'm seeing a lot of people, a lot of kids coming through who are awfully familiar with technology when it comes to Game Boy and surfing the internet. But when it comes to more sophisticated programs and doing Access and Excel and other kind of programs, that is not, they're not any more comfortable than anybody else with that.
That's right. Our next question is from Panama, and the question is that I'm an administrator and I do understand the need for innovation in technology, but I also am required to see the financial stability of the organization, and innovation costs money, as we all know. So how do we manage the balance?
Let me start with that one, because I frankly think for an administrator, this tension that you feel is absolutely normal. I think it's a symptom of a healthy organization. On the one hand, the administrator has to be very careful in maintaining processes, systems, accountability, and so on. On the other hand, the administrator must also see that he or she is not stifling innovation, that is supporting innovation. So how do you do this? I think you have to be very judicious about what you support. I think you need to demand documentation, good plans, good evaluation. And the bottom line is it takes an administrator with a lot of skill, a lot of wisdom, and guts to manage this dynamic.
I think you need to realize, too, that you think of the innovation as an ongoing investment. It's not a one-time investment that's going to solve everything. And if someone promises you that this will solve everything, you should be very suspicious. But it is something an ongoing investment, to continuing to update, learning from your experience, guiding your next investments.
And how do you keep the momentum going? Because, usually you go to a workshop, you start an initiative, and then it sort of dies down after a while. So how do we keep that going?
That is a challenge. And often you need to change the organization and the way you're functioning. As I spoke in my module, that you need to redesign the organization and restructure the jobs so you're not just doing the old things with a new tool, but you're finding new ways to carry out your functions.
And that's very important, because quite often we don't get the benefit of technology. We adopt new technologies that are more expensive, but we do the same old thing with them, and so therefore this is not a good investment.
Or we adopt new technologies, and 6 months later they're gathering dust. And I'm willing to bet everyone in this audience can walk the halls of their organization and poke their head in closets, and they're going to see technology with great promise that's underutilized.
That, I suppose, is a function of knowing how to work with the new technology, competencies among people.
Well, and providing the organization, as an administrator, providing the organizational support, an ongoing support for the use of it, and also an intelligent process in selecting the technology you're going to use, not a one-time flash in the pan, but 5 years from now, is this still going to be viable for us?
So it's a combination of administrative support and then competencies and processes and procedures within the organization.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for your questions. Let's now move to the second module of our program.
It is clear that the early days of technological innovation were fraught with missteps and miscalculations. In an article in USA Today, the Morgan Stanley Investment Group estimated that U.S. companies threw away $130 billion on unneeded software and other technology, according to a study of 25 years of tech spending. The Gartner research firm estimated that worldwide, companies waste as much as 20% of the $2.7 trillion spent annually on technology. This is the result of companies stampeding into the wrong technologies. They buy too much and don't implement new technology properly. They also underestimate the time needed to make it work. And CEOs, especially during the go-go years of high-tech development, often spend too quickly, without clear goals. And it isn't just small companies that mess up. In recent years, big names such as Nike, Kmart, Gateway, and Hershey Foods have lost millions on failed technology. It is predicted that more companies are likely feeling the pain. Our important topic today, the networked organization in a multi-technology environment, focuses upon the necessity for intelligently incorporating a systems approach to optimizing and integrating available information and communication technology into our organizations. In networking organizations in a multi-technology environment, it is apparent that there are certain prerequisites to the successful adoption and implementation of appropriate technology. The first is the selection of the modality based upon a thorough assessment of current and future needs. Next, the appropriate employees must be selected and trained. And lastly, for selected technology workers to function successfully, there must also be an organizational culture that supports and sustains the integration of innovative technologies into the ongoing business, educational, or governmental mission. First, in terms of matching the technology to the appropriate need, I would like to use our own ITC as a model of a networked organization that over the years has been able to take advantage of a multi-technology capability to achieve its mission. The ITC was developed initially in response to the need to provide technology training to a vast and dispersed network of users in 15 different countries. Satellite technology with its multi-point capacity fit this need exactly. As the ITC developed, various sites indicated a desire for video workshops, a format that was useful in providing in-depth live discussions and analysis. Room video conferencing technology was ideally suited to follow up on the satellite-based multi-point communication process. Now, the ITC next decided to provide the opportunity for individuals throughout the network to advance their education in technology without incurring prohibitive travel costs. The Internet was ideally suited for this distance learning activity. This strategy, interestingly, has been counter to the current technology in many organizations. It appears more often that organizations develop Internet and video conferencing first, simply as a way to reduce travel costs, without full consideration of the capability of the technology to respond to the organization's need. Matching organizational need to the appropriate technology will not guarantee successful implementation of technology. Clearly, the organization must develop the appropriate human competencies within its workers. Many first-rate technological programs have failed to live up to their promise due to poor or inadequate training. Similarly, selection of the appropriate employees to be trained and utilized in innovative technologies is important. As an example, I'd like to focus on virtual teamwork. As I discussed in a program last year, it's important to know what attributes to look for when selecting virtual team members. You also want to know how to motivate individuals to participate, how to keep them active and involved in these technological initiatives. Clearly, not everyone's suited to functioning well in the relative isolation of a virtual team, communicating and working with others electronically across a region, a country, or even across the world. Virtual team members must have special capabilities or competencies. First of all, they must be very self-motivated and capable of managing themselves and their workload. Secondly, they should have strong interpersonal awareness and relational ability. They have the extra challenge of having to communicate without the benefit of nonverbal signals. Thirdly, with minimal supervision available, they should have a high degree of credibility and trustworthiness within the organization. And lastly, they should exhibit cultural awareness and sensitivity to the values of others. Collaborating with others who may be living in a different culture, with different work values and expectations, can be very challenging. Now, these are the characteristics that make an employee ready to take on the highly innovative tasks such as virtual teamwork. What I would like to address in the remainder of this presentation is the issue of organizational culture, specifically the organization's readiness to adopt, accept, and sustain innovative technologies into mainstream activities. To help develop this theme, I would like to take you to take a little pretest, if you would. Read each of these statements and tally the number that seems similar to something you've been told, something you may have sensed at your workplace, or that you may even yourself had said. Now, do this kind of quickly. Don't take too long. You can even count on your fingers. First question, or first statement. Great idea. Let's send it to a committee. Let's do more research. Maybe we ought to sleep on it a while. Number 2. Our present method is time-tested and reliable. Number 3. It's impractical. Let's be realistic here. Number 4. If you want to get ahead here, don't rock the boat. Number 5. It's not our problem, or it's not our responsibility. It's not our business. 6. Let's table it for the time being until the political climate is better. 7. We've done all right up to now without it. Number 8. Do it my way. You'll understand why after you've been here as long as I have. Number 9. Sure, everything's fine if it works, but what if it fails? Number 10. It's too controversial. The boss won't like it. How many of you indicated 3 or more? This is my own scientific, or rather unscientific, assessment of an organization's readiness for technological innovation. All of these responses are typical negative, bureaucratic responses to change and innovation. We think of bureaucracy as a government problem. In fact, it's a problem of all large organizations everywhere, across all cultures. Bureaucracy is characteristic of large corporations, educational institutions, the military, as well as charitable organizations. I'd like to make a working distinction between bureaucracy and administration. Administration is a necessary function in all organizations. Without it, the organization cannot pursue its mission. Administration is an active, positive force that helps organizations achieve their goals in an effective and efficient manner. Now, bureaucracy, on the other hand, can create inefficiencies and ineffectiveness. The basic goal of a bureaucracy, as I'm defining it, is survival. Bureaucracies tend to be self-serving. They're committed to maintaining the status quo. They do not necessarily strive to achieve excellence. It's my experience that practically all large organizations develop cultures that resist creativity, innovation, initiative, and risk-taking. Look at your responses to the pretest. Mission statements posted on the wall may praise employees with their creative minds, but what do most large organizations reinforce when it's time for promotions and raises? In most bureaucratic organizations, promotions and raises are based on having made no mistakes, writing thorough, error-free reports, not making waves, doing as one is told, following policies and procedures to the letter, being a team player, offending no one, and going along with the rules of the organization, no matter how inefficient, and without complaint. In fact, every major multinational company in the world is trying to figure out how to be innovative while at the same time increase their market share. All are considering how to take advantage of the benefits and strengths of a large organization, such as economies of scale, brand name, deep financial resources, global networks, and technological resources, while at the same time achieving the quickness, creativity, innovativeness, and risk-taking capabilities of a small entrepreneurial organization. In an increasingly fast-paced competitive environment, it's no longer sufficient to attempt to dominate competitors by virtue of size. The business model of the big fish eating the small fish is no longer a surefire model. Increasingly, speed, flexibility, and the ability to respond quickly to marketplace demands are of essence. A more appropriate analogy today is that of the fast fish beating the slow one. A number of initiatives have emerged in response to this new environment. One is the development of creative think tanks that exist within large organizations but are free from administrative hierarchical control. These are attempts to create an entrepreneurial spirit within a large organization. For that reason, they're often referred to as intrapreneurial units. Sometimes they're physically located outside of the corporate headquarters in order to reinforce their autonomy. Companies such as IBM, General Motors, and Saturn have had success with this model. Another major initiative that has developed in response to the over-control and inefficiencies inherent in large bureaucratic organizations are profit or business centers. Large organizations have created semi-autonomous units that operate practically as independent businesses with their own budgets and creative control. These profit centers have responsibility and authority for day-to-day decision-making. Various corporate-wide services are provided by the central administration to take advantage of economies of scale and provide working capital to fund the profit center's business initiatives. Peter Drucker, one of the most widely recognized business consultants and authors in the United States, has said, quote, "Every organization, not just business, needs one core competence, innovation." End quote. The critical question you should be asking yourself is, does my organization truly support innovation? Without a demonstrated interest, effectively integrating innovative information and communication technology into day-to-day business practices can be difficult. I'd now like to move to the how to do it portion of this presentation. How can an administrator respond to the organizational need for innovative readiness? I'll focus primarily on the role of administrators, not the innovators. As I'll discuss in a few minutes, administrators are the key to success in creating and sustaining innovation in an organization, be it in technology utilization or any other type of system, process, or product. I would like to outline 3 strategies administrators can employ to encourage and sustain innovation. Strategy number 1, stay out of the way of innovators. The first thing medical students learn in medical school is the Hippocratic Oath. Quote, "First of all, do no harm," end quote. I believe administrators should also swear to a Hippocratic Oath. First of all, do no harm. I'd like to read a Western Union memo from 1876. Now, Western Union pioneered telegraphic communication and was considering moving into the latest innovation technology at the time, the telephone. This internal memo stated, quote, "The telephone has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication. The device is inherently of no value to us," end quote. Now, how would you like to have been the administrator who wrote that memo? It is important that administrators not get in the way of innovators because of their own short-sightedness, insecurity, fear of failure, or need for control. Supporting creative people is part of the job description of an administrator. Creativity keeps an organization healthy, growing, and competitive. Administrators should have a high awareness of ways in which they and their organization may be inhibiting innovation, regularly scanning for rules and regulations that are negatively impacting employee initiative is important. And it also takes a healthy dose of self-awareness, emotional health, and humility to avoid echoing the statements or sentiments in the pretest you just took with your own employees. The second strategy administrators can employ is to champion innovation. This is a more active role than simply staying out of the way. Being a champion for innovation means actively coaching individuals with creative ideas, helping them to craft their ideas into a viable plan or proposal. And then comes the tough part for many administrators. Once the innovator has put together the plan, the administrator must then shepherd the proposal through the administrative process. This involves seeing that the plan does not get waylaid, held up, or turned down by the organization's political process, or by an envious or fearful worker, or by a nonsensical rule. This is where the administrator must demonstrate courage and finesse. We all know certain skillful and experienced administrators who demonstrate the ability to find resources where others fail. We also know administrators who know when and how to use political muscle. Innovation does involve both financial risks for the organization and personal risk-taking for the administrator. No question about it. And bureaucratic organizations usually have little appetite for risk. The third and ultimately most effective way administrators can support innovation is by building an organizational culture that actively encourages, supports, and rewards initiative, rather than a culture that is risk-averse and insecure when faced with a prospect or opportunity for positive change. How does an administrator create such a culture? Because of the power of a repressive, bureaucratic culture, it's often hard to find a sufficient number of administrators to accomplish this. Without active, involved, and passionate leadership in the highest levels of administration, organizational cultures do not change. At best, changing an organizational culture is a lengthy and difficult process. It involves more than rewording a vision statement. Gifford Pinchot has written a lot about intrapreneuring, and he was once asked how he would go about creating an innovative organization. He replied that it was a three-step process. 1, first, you must identify the innovators in the organization. That's relatively easy to do. They tend to stand out. Their names are on all the proposals. They tend to have an internal network. They know each other. They're going to take coffee breaks. They're going to eat lunch together. 2, next, you ask these innovators which administrators support them and champion their ideas within the organization. You make a list of these individuals. And the third and last step in creating an innovative organizational culture, these champions are promoted to higher levels in the administration whenever an open position occurs. In this way, they gain increasingly greater authority in the organization. Over time, most high-level administrators will be champions of innovation and will reward the types of attitudes and behaviors that will sustain an innovative organizational culture. By way of summary, I would like to administer a post-test. On a piece of paper, mark true or false for each of these statements. 1, innovation must be initiated by top-level management. True or false? 2, innovation is a revolutionary process. True or false? 3, innovation is hard work that most workers are incapable of doing. 4, all an organization needs to do to be creative is to hire creative people. If you answered false to all 4 questions, you've done awfully well. Each statement expresses a commonly held yet incorrect myth or belief about innovation in the workplace. Let's review the statements one by one. The first statement was, innovation must be initiated by top-level management. This is false. Innovation must be supported by administrators at the top. But actually, most innovation is a bottom-up activity. If we listen to our workers, we will find that many have excellent ideas because they're the ones who understand best the day-to-day problems and challenges of the organization. They also have less investment in the status quo than administrators, so they're free to think outside of conventional practice. The second statement, innovation is a revolutionary process, is false. Innovation is evolutionary, not revolutionary. Good ideas evolve from discussions and practice over time and are rarely the result of a lightning bolt. The creative process tends to be synergistic. That is, one good idea builds on another. Given the highly complex nature of technological innovation, teams of individuals are responsible for innovation. Organizations must provide daily opportunities for this evolution and not wait for a revolutionary innovator to save the organization from the doldrums. Statement number 3, creativity is hard work that most people cannot do, is also false. In fact, creativity is not terribly difficult. Finding an administrator with the courage to champion innovative ideas, now that's the difficult part. Creating and sustaining a culture that encourages innovation in a large organization is awfully tough work. Coming up with exciting, innovative ideas is really not so hard to do when employees feel that their superior is interested and the organization rewards them for doing so. Many people are capable of thinking creatively if the rules, regulations, and politics of the organization are not demotivating them. The last statement, number 4, was all an organization needs to do to be creative is to hire creative people. False again. The formula is not creativity equals innovation. Creativity is just the first step in the process. The next step is initiative. For a creative idea to become reality, there must be energy, drive, and rigorous planning. This is called sweat equity. Innovation in large organizations also requires administrative risk-taking. So the correct formula is creativity plus initiative plus risk-taking equals innovation. Well, I hope you all did well in the post-test. I look forward to discussing this further during the discussion period of the broadcast. Perhaps as a group we can brainstorm some other ideas for fostering innovation where you work.
We will now continue with the second question and answer session. Dr. Golden, the question is from Mexico. Are you suggesting we support innovation in technology for the sake of innovation? Isn't there a potential problem there?
Yeah, and I think that's a good question, actually, because there is a danger there, and we saw that in the 90s with the dot-com failures, where there were tremendous, great ideas, but no business plan. No way, how are we going to support this? How are we going to make money? So I think we do need to be cautious. On the other hand, I do think that we have to have an openness to innovation in technology, that we're willing to devote a certain percentage of our resources, our employees' time, to innovation. And those innovations, as they're being considered, should be held to vigorous, rigorous marketplace criteria.
And how do we go about assessing them and evaluating them or researching them?
Well, one of the things is we do it incrementally, as Dr. Golden was saying, is that we begin to start the path, start with the first applications, test it in test markets or pilot tested parts of the company, see if it's working, and then begin to expand it.
And then that fits into the model of evolution versus revolution.
Exactly.
And can we elaborate on that? Because I think that there are certain mindsets that say that we have to really revolutionize this whole operation.
Yeah.
That was part of what was in the dot-com, is that everything would change.
Okay.
The whole business would change. And we discovered that the old economy is still here. And the companies that were most successful with it used the internet technology to leverage their strengths in the regular economy. Many of the firms that were totally internet spun off a separate division. They found that didn't work very well, and when it became time to integrate it into the rest of the organization, it was very difficult.
And our next question comes from Ecuador. Go ahead, please.
Sí, muy buenos días. Desearía preguntar... ¿Sí?
Sí, buenos días. Adelante.
Buenos días.
Ya, desearía hacer la siguiente pregunta. En el contexto sistémico que se plantea...
My question is the following. With this systemic approach,
Hay un impacto de la tecnología, de la informática y las comunicaciones en el aspecto estratégico de una organización.
there's an impact of IT in the strategic vision of the organization. What is the importance in this context of the cost of technology for these organizations? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to start. Go ahead.
I think as part of your overall strategic plan is you need to develop the information that you're going to need to carry out that strategy, and think ahead of the types of investments you're going to need to make in the information technology and the types of information you're going to collect that you will need in order to carry out those strategies, so you can plan ahead for that. There will be costs, and often that's the case, is we have strategies without thinking about the costs that we're going to have to invest to make the information available in order to carry out those strategies.
Yeah, and I would totally agree, and I think in addition to making sure that your IT program is integrated into your strategic plan, your IT director, whoever's in charge, should have access to the executives or the executive committee, so there's that ongoing communication, so that individual is not isolated from the organization working in a vacuum.
And for our next question, we go back to Mexico. Go ahead, please.
Sí, una cuestión interesante que debemos plantearnos.
An interesting question for me is about the strategy of the English language and the use of the English language.
Para una traducción automática o implantar el segundo idioma obligatorio, pero realmente
do you think we should implement software for translation, for automatic translation, or we should implement English directly as the language of use for technology? What's your take on this?
Your experience in that, Larry?
That is a real challenge. I think actually you may be better at, it's not politically correct, but go to English as the language. As much of the technology is being developed in the English language in the systems, it may be better, rather than fight that, to go ahead and begin to develop the English capability.
I could add, too, that a lot of that translation software is problematic. I don't think they've got that down yet, and we hope in the future, but there's problems with that software.
Not only that, but then you have to find the equivalent of words in other languages.
Highly technical words.
So
it's very difficult.
The difficulty there. Aguascalientes, Mexico. Go ahead, please, for our next question. Oh, actually, the question is coming from Sinaloa. I'm sorry.
Good morning. Yes, I'm calling from Sinaloa. How can we talk our bosses into a positive attitude for innovation?
I'll tell you, I think you've got to sell it. I think you've got to be an entrepreneur. I think you've got to make a good, solid case for it to move your boss. And as I mentioned, I think earlier, that begins with urgency. You've got to show on a business, financial basis, on the economics, that this is on a return on investment basis, that this is going to benefit the organization. I think you need to go to an administrator on that level, on the level of finances, not on the level of it seems like it's a good idea and we all love to do it. I think that's the best way of capturing his attention, and again, urgency, that we need to do it, and we need to do it now. And these are the financial reasons. Would be my guess.
I think if you can demonstrate small successes, if you can do it incrementally, and you can start a small investment and a small project and show the success of it, then you can get the administrators' attention and enthusiasm for greater investments.
Does it get into the top-down versus bottom-up strategies? Is that something that we need to consider in this scenario?
Oh, I think so. I think an organization that is run more collaboratively, or like the profit center model, I think is going to be much more open to, traditionally will be much more open to innovation than its traditional hierarchical.
Right. So building these teams collaboratively and then bringing the managers into these teams are probably a good strategy to follow.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Now, let me go back to this question of evolution versus revolution. We know that some implementation of technology takes place by training people. You have to train, and so that's an evolutionary process. But then again, technology has this revolutionary aspect to it. Sometimes you are confronted with a new technology in an organization that makes things quite different. So how do you reconcile the innovation in new technologies versus the time that it takes to train people and infuse technology into teams?
It's a really good question, because after the dot-com fiasco, I want to call it, you see a lot of organizations that are extremely shy of new technology, and it's sort of a backlash moving. We're not going to adopt. We'll just get along with the same computers for another 5. And I think that's obviously a problem. You see a lot of organizations saying technology is good, but we don't want to be the leader. Let somebody else work out the kinks. So I think you see that also.
So there's a slowdown in adoption of new technologies. Is that what you're seeing?
I think there's a slowdown from the idea that was in the dot-com bubble, is that all we have to do is have a really neat technology and that'll solve our problems. But I think companies are using their technology. I mean, everybody's got a web page now. It has just changed the way people communicate and gather information. And it is a revolution. But if people went into it, I think the better was to incrementally, as we got more experienced with it, learned from it, tried new things, and continued to move. But in a very short period of time, of 10 years, we have had a revolution in the way we communicate and how information is available.
So we have had this tremendous infusion. We are now more wise about the technology. What do you see the future developing?
I think we're going to see, I think we're close to it. I think we're going to be seeing people integrated into their existing business plans more than saying that this is going to save our business. What you're seeing with in the retail industry, for instance. At this point, there's very few successful strictly online businesses. eBay, Amazon, a few others, I guess. But most organizations like Walmart and so on have been successful because they have integrated it into their plan.
Thank you for your excellent questions, but we have run out of time. We hope that you have enjoyed participating once again in this exciting multilingual and multinational program.